Hi, I'm Angus Cress Gillespie, your host for Old Ways in New Jersey. I'm here with Spook Handy of New Brunswick, New Jersey, who's been named Best Folk Artist by Upstage Magazine. Spook has toured all 50 U.S. states, all 10 Canadian provinces, and many other countries, as well as all 21 New Jersey counties. He can be heard at theaters, art centers, libraries, universities, churches, and anywhere where people gather to hear good music. Spook's music tells the story of America through the old-fashioned medium of folk music. He tells of the people he's met, the places he's been, the experiences he's had traveling all over this nation. He addresses personal and spiritual issues through engaging and uplifting songs that come both from tradition and from his own ample supply of original compositions. His music draws influences from many diverse styles such as blues, bluegrass, and the music of Appalachia. It's my pleasure to welcome Spook Handy to our studio here in East Brunswick today. Spook, welcome to East Brunswick Television.
Hey, it's great to be back here, Angus.
I wanted to ask you a little bit, you have a world tour going, Keep the Flame Alive?
Remembering Pete Seeger World Tour. Remembering Pete Seeger Keep the Flame Alive World Tour. Yeah.
Tell us about the world tour.
Okay, well, I had the incredible fortune of performing alongside Pete Seeger more than 50 times in the last 10 years of his life. And doing that, I learned a lot of his songs and the stories behind them. But I also learned a lot about who Pete was and what he stood for and his message. And it's touched me so deeply that I took upon myself the mission after he passed away in 2014 to travel everywhere. First I said all 21 New Jersey counties. And then I decided to do all 50 US states, all 10 Canadian provinces, and all over the world if I can, to bring those songs, stories, and message of Pete Seeger to as many people as possible.
And there's a new CD that's related to this, Woody, Pete, and Me.
Pete, Woody, and Me, yeah. Volume 1, Keep the Flame Alive. Yeah. So the neat thing about that is that Pete told me, and he told hundreds of other younger musicians, learn the old songs. Learn the different ways they were sung by different groups of people, and write new words to keep them up to date. Write new verses about the world we live in today, and write new songs that everybody can sing along to. So this album is a combination of songs like, let's say I do Where Have All the Flowers Gone? And I do that pretty much the way it was sung. I'll do a song, My Rainbow Race, that Pete wrote, and I kind of changed the arrangement a little bit. One of the last songs that Pete wrote is Keep the Flame Alive. And he co-wrote that with Lori Wyatt, and I completely changed the arrangement. And then I did Banks of Marble, where I wrote 2 new verses, and then songs of my own that everybody can sing.
Keep the Flame Alive, you changed the words too.
No, Keep the Flame Alive, it was a 4-verse song. I made it 3 verses. You know, I sang the 3rd verse first, but completely changed the musical arrangement on it.
So it's the music's changed, but the lyrics is...
The lyrics are essentially the same, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hear the CD did rather well?
Oh yeah, it was fantastic. So it was played all over the world on folk radio, and in 2016 it was the number 12 CD for the year, which is actually not bad because it came out in June. So that's good. For 2 months, it was the number 3 CD, and one of the songs on the album, Vote, my own song that I wrote, made it up to number 2 in November.
And how did you choose the title, Keep the Flame Alive?
Okay, so this is, and I'm thinking how important it is for folks who know who Pete Seeger is and what he stood for. He's one of the, model Americans in our entire history, maybe the most important American folk musician in the last 100 years. And he had this tradition of using songs as a tool to nurture and build community. And that is the flame that I think we have to keep alive. So when I heard this song that was recorded on his very last album, I said, that song has to go on the album. And then I realized that that's the theme. keep the flame alive. So that's how we got the name.
I was struck, there's sort of a relationship between you and Pete Seeger. I mean, his life mission, one could say, was speaking truth to power. Like he was testified before the HUAC committee, which took a lot of courage. And then as I was listening to your song, your version of Keep the Flame Alive, I was thinking, well, you don't explicitly mention Donald Trump,
No.
but and you're trying to keep it subtle, but I think it speaks to our own time as well.
Absolutely. So one of the reasons why Pete is loved by so many people is that he had a way of presenting his message that the listener would feel personally that, wow, Pete is giving voice to exactly how I feel.
But it's subtle. It's not like a sledgehammer.
No, and that's what resonates with me. So for me, Pete was this guy who could find this common ground. One of the big things that I find amazing, regardless of what your politics are, 2010, I was touring around the country, and I got home from my tour on Election Day. This is the year that the Tea Party took over Congress. Yeah. Well, in the weeks leading up to this election, there were so many people who were Tea Party voters that were excited about the music I was playing, the songs of Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie, and they wanted me to play at their rallies. And what I realized, I told this to Pete, and he just got such a kick out of it, that people who have opposite political viewpoints than he have still love his music. And it's because he found that common ground that we all can stand on, that we all share, that we all, that reminds us that we're all together in this picture.
Well, what I'd like to do is bring your group, the Seed Planters, and let's listen to the song.
Great, let's do that.
Okay.
When the bully winds of winter are blowing all around, some will stand and shiver, some will flee the town. It's wise to get prepared now if we are to survive. Chop the wood, build a fire, and keep the flame alive. Keep the flame alive. Keep the flame alive. Together we will tend the fire and keep the flame alive. Keep the flame alive. Keep the flame alive. Together we will tend the fire and keep the flame alive. With a sledge, hammer, and a wedge, a splitting axe and maul, we'll have all the logs we need, cut and stack by fall. But careful, choose the wood to use before you swing a stroke. The elm you skip is a devil to split. Use maple, ash, and oak. Keep the flame alive. Keep the flame alive. Together we will tend the fire and keep the flame alive. Keep the flame alive. Keep the flame alive. Together we will tend the fire and keep the flame alive. In the cruelest season, should the wood run low, buried in the ashes, coals are still aglow. But if we tend the embers, the fire will revive. Keep the coals, tossing sticks, and keep the flame alive. Keep the flame alive. Keep the flame alive. Together we will tend the fire and keep the flame alive. Keep the flame alive. Keep the flame alive. Together we will tend the fire and keep the flame alive. Keep the flame alive.
As part of your world tour, you're doing panels and conferences and festivals. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so let's talk about the workshops to begin with. So I do the normal songwriting and guitar workshop and the stage performance workshop, but I do another workshop that's called eliciting audience participation. And
Which is something Pete Seeger was known for.
he was a master of it. I mean, the first time I played with him, we were standing right there on stage. We were going to sing my song, Vote, and Pete said, "I hope you get everybody to sing." And my heart dropped to my.
Because you never thought about that.
No,
Because you're a performer.
It had you know, and it had been like a mystery to me how to do this. But standing beside him so many times and watching him do it, I've learned a lot of how to do it. And if I could take a whole, hour and a half workshop and boil it down to one word or one sentence, listen to your audience, and that's a kind of a counterintuitive idea. Listen to the audience. You want them to sing louder, you sing quieter. You want to build up the intensity, you play slower. And you listen, and you're kind of like leading, but you're more of like, you're more like the chaperone of the song than the leader. Let the audience take
Well,
over
I think
the
it's
song.
tricky because you have to subsume your own ego.
Absolutely.
And that doesn't, no offense, it doesn't come easy for a musician.
Well, and that's the challenge because you're the guy. I mean, so let's take a song that I quote unquote wrote.
Yeah.
Nobody else can say that they wrote that song. But on the other hand, did I really write that or did it come from someplace else?
Yeah.
And so there is this balance. I have to have the self-confidence, and I have to protect my own work, but I also have to realize that what I'm really doing is giving voice to these things, these ideas and concepts that are out there in the, in the universe that need to be given voice to.
I think Pete Seeger once said something along the lines of, you don't have to tear a house down to rebuild the foundation. What did he mean by that?
Okay, so
you're closer to him than me. Yeah.
Right, this is where we get into the panels and the round tables and stuff like that. So lately, especially in 2017, but even leading up to this, there's been more of an interest in how we can use folk music for social change.
Yeah.
And Pete basically said this: you don't have to tear down a house to rebuild its foundation. What that means is that if there are problems in our society, we don't have to destroy society. We need to find out what these problems are and fix the problems. And I think that the problems that we have in our society today are a lot deeper than most people recognize. And we go back to what I was talking about with 2010 and finding this music that everybody kind of like agrees with. I think that all Americans still agree with the basic fundamentals that need to be repaired. We could talk about issues. Those are like windows on the second floor or chimneys on top of the roof. The real foundation is where we need to put our attention to solve the problems. So if we fix that foundation, we don't have to tear down the house.
So he was talking about gradualism rather than revolution.
Well, when you get on that level, what is really revolution? Is it taking up arms and shooting people, or is it getting down to, let's use the word radical.
Yeah.
The root word of radical is root, as in radish.
Yeah.
Or the square root of 2, root 2, root, radical. So it's getting down to the very, very basics and working to repair that. That takes a long, long time to do.
Patience.
Patience, a lot of patience.
Yeah. And how does all this tie in with Pythagoras?
Pythagoras. I love Pythagoras. So Pythagoras, as most people know, was a mathematician in 6th century Greece.
Well, you studied math.
Yes, I did. I was a math major.
Yeah.
And so I know a little bit about Pythagoras. What most people don't know is that Pythagoras was a spiritual teacher. And so there are a lot of spiritual principles in his mathematics. For instance, you take a pyramid, and the length of its base is basically equal to the height of its apex. Okay? Now this means, so one way you can apply that is like, let's say you're a songwriter. If you write this many songs, you're bound to get one song that's this good. If you write this many songs, you're bound to get one song that's this good, and lots of songs that are this good. The other thing about the pyramid is that as you build bigger and bigger pyramids, the more important the base becomes to that. How strong is that foundation that you're building the pyramid on? So this is why they run together. And Pythagoras also taught, and this is where we're getting to the crux of what my mission is all about here with this Remembering Pete Seeger World Tour. Pythagoras taught thoughts are things, and we manifest these thoughts by organizing and directing them. Okay? So when you start with the word, when we start with the Constitution of the United States, the very first word is we. When you look at the word democracy, the very first part of that is people.
Yeah,
Democracy,
demos.
people. If we continue to organize and direct our thoughts around this concept of we will have a strong, well-functioning democracy. When we get into the point where we start getting negative about the government's terrible, taxes are this, blah, blah, blah. We start thinking about me. This is the foundation of democracy starts to crumble because we're not maintaining our thought on the we-ness. We're retaining it on the me-ness, and the whole pyramid, the whole house comes tumbling down unless we repair that foundation.
Let me get back to what we're talking about, which is folk music.
Yes.
As a musician, how do you define folk music?
Okay, folk music to me, now I know that there have been civil wars fought over this for the last millennia, Yeah. But for me, my definition of folk music is that it's music that sings about our landscape, our history, our culture, sings about the people, and it sings about our values, and it sings about our challenges.
Would you agree with me that the words are important?
Absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the most important thing about folk music, in fact, all art, is that it reflects and promotes our values.
Yeah. And is it relevant today?
More relevant than let's put it this way. I'm not going to say more relevant. It's as relevant today as ever.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think you've sometimes tossed around the word forbidden folk, or what did you mean by that?
Well, okay, I'll tell you about that. So I am a member of the International Folk Alliance.
Yeah,
and we just had the 2000.
It's an important group. Yeah.
Very important. We just had the 2017 International Folk Alliance Conference
in February.
In February in Kansas City.
Let me guess. The keynote speaker was Billy Bragg.
Billy Bragg.
Yeah.
Okay. Now Billy Bragg is an amazing guy, and if you know his stuff, you understand what this concept is. Forbidden folk is giving voice to those things that the powers. When you talk about speaking truth to the power, these are the truths that the powers do not want to hear. Okay, Billy Bragg, for folks who know who Billy Bragg is and who know what folk music is, if you know a little bit about both, you're going to be like, Billy Bragg, folk music? But
because he's a punk rocker.
He's a punk rocker, okay? But the thing that he was doing, and he sang with Pete a lot. He talked a lot about Pete in his keynote address. He did the same thing. He was singing about these fundamental concepts that we need in order to keep our society strong. And this is back in the 80s. It goes back to this, is that, and this is what he said in his address. He said, the enemy is not capitalism. The enemy is not conservatism. The enemy is cynicism. Cynicism. And that is when people believe that they don't have any power. This is when people believe that everything's rigged against them, and this is when people believe that their vote doesn't count in any way, whether it's voting with their behavior or voting in the voting booth. And this is what the people who want to take over the world want us to believe. Cynicism. Cynicism is the enemy. And going back to music, all art, reflects and promotes our values. The question is not, does my song promote and reflect our values? The question is, what values does my song promote?
And can it be used to fight cynicism?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, so I have a song, a brand new song that I wrote. It just came out a month ago, and in fact, I taught it to my band earlier this morning. It's called "We'll Always Have a Song to Sing."
Well, let's bring the band on.
Sure, let's do that. Okay.
If you can break the hammer of justice, defy democracy, gag the press, make arrests, I would still be free. 'Cause the bell of freedom in my heart will always have a place to ring. And I'll always, always, always have a song to sing. Always, always, always have a song to sing. Always, always, always have a song to sing. You know the bell of freedom in our hearts will always have a place to ring. And we'll always, always, always have a song to sing. Yes, we will. Now, some may fight among us, ask who here is to blame. Some will cry and wonder why, but let's not play that game. There's a voice inside of each of us, can you hear it call our names? Saying we'll always, always, always have a song to sing. Yes, we will. Always, always, always have a song to sing. Always, always, always have a song to sing. You know the bell of freedom in our hearts will always have a place to ring. And we'll always, always, always have a song to sing. Yes, we will. This darkest hour, there is no time to hide. So let's stoke our inner fires and keep the flame alive. If we raise our voices up as one, we will not be denied. And we will always, always, always have a song to sing. Yes, we will. Always, always, always have a song to sing. Always, always, always have a song to sing. You know the bell of freedom in our hearts will always have a place to ring. And we'll always, always, always have a song to sing. Always, always have a song to sing. Always, always, always have a song to sing. The bell of freedom in our hearts will always have a place to ring. And we'll always, always, always have a song to sing. Amen. Yes, we'll always, always, always have a song to sing.
As I was listening to the song and I heard phrases like gag the press, make arrests, break the hammer of justice,
Yep.
I was thinking, well, that's kind of speaking to our own times.
Absolutely. You know, my friend John McCutcheon, who's a very known folk musician, I showed him the song, this was just a couple weeks ago, And I originally said, you can break the hammer of justice, defy democracy, gag the press and make arrests, but I will still be free. And John actually questioned if you actually can break the hammer of justice. Because, so getting back to fundamentals, rebuilding the foundation, we have these three symbols in our democracy that are enshrined in the song If I Had a Hammer. The hammer of justice, the bell of freedom, and the song that we have to sing.
And they're all alluded to here.
Yes. And so what I'm saying, I want to remind people that if you could break the hammer of justice, I would still be free, because the bell of freedom in my heart will always have a place to ring. And I'll always, always, always have a song to sing. And what I have found, we can go, if you really listen to people and you really talk to them and really have a conversation, we may disagree about abortion, we may disagree about taxes, we may disagree about the environment, the EPA, not the environment. But we'll find that we all stand on this concept of freedom, that freedom of expression, that we have a voice, that we all have this right to be ourselves, to stand up and be ourselves.
In your group, because sometimes I've heard you sing alone, but sometimes with the group called the Seed Planters, how'd you come up with that name?
Oh, so that's pretty funny. So Folk Alliance, okay? They're Folk Alliance FA. Folk Alliance Regional Midwest.
Okay.
They call their conference out there the Farm Conference.
Oh.
Farm.
Flyover country.
Well, what they did was they asked my trio to play there, and I was thinking, let's come up with a creative name. The first thing that came to my mind was the Farm Boys, but that doesn't make sense with Diane in the band, because she's she's not a boy by anybody's stretch of the imagination. Yeah. So it popped into my head, the Seed Planters, and again, the ego thing.
Seeds of change.
Seeds of change, but Pete was a seed planter. Yeah. Pete Seeger planted seeds. There's the story of the acorn planter, where you plant 100 acorns, and within 20 years, maybe one of them is going to grow into a mighty oak. But you just keep planting the seeds everywhere you go.
Persistence.
Persistence. And some of them will grow. So
where do we go from here?
We need to get back to the basics. We really do. We need to, I'll say one thing that might be controversial, but, don't waste your time. Let's say you're an environmentalist. Don't waste your time fighting the XL pipeline if you're not going to go out there and defend democracy and vote. If you want to talk about cynicism, think about this. 55% of registered voters did not vote.
Wow.
So I think this presidential election was not so much about Democrat versus Republican. I mean, is Trump really a Republican? I don't think it was so much about conservative versus liberal. I'm not even sure that Trump is a conservative. I think it was cynicism versus hope. And when you have 55% of people not even voting, that's cynicism. And I think that you have another half the people that did vote for the most cynical character we've probably ever had. Who believes that this stinks and this is a catastrophe and all this stuff. We need to start getting past that. We need to get over the anger. 3 things to destroy our democracy. 1, greed is good. That's a lie.
Let me guess. Apathy? How am I doing?
Empathy, you said?
Apathy.
Oh, apathy. Yeah, apathy, yeah. And the belief that anger is a virtue. It is not a virtue.
Okay. Well, it's been a real pleasure talking to you about your music, but I want to just follow up. How can people get a hold of your CD, and where can they find out more about your music?
Thank you so much. SpookHandy.com. Go on there and you'll be able to find it, and you'll find information how to bring a concert to your town, and how to get a CD or a T-shirt, and get to read what I'm doing, and sign up for the email list and all kinds of stuff like that. Get a newsletter and all kinds of stuff.
Okay, so we'll see you at the Folk Festival.
See you at the Folk Festival, everybody. I hope we have a huge crowd, sea of people at the Folk Festival.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Angus.
Okay.
Always, always, always have a song to sing. Always, always, always have a song to sing. The bell of freedom in our hearts will always have a place to ring.